Fasten your seatbelt for a challenge, and it's not presenting holiday.
I have only 2 days to learn to run a tour.
Craig Doyle's looking up the wildlife down under.
Could you tell me the most common species of grasshopper in the area?
No.
And Toya Wilcox finds hidden talents at a taberna in Corfu.
The sudden Power Cup fiasco might get me off the hook for the Greek dancing. I guess I'd better get my dancing shoes ready.
Holiday, fasten your seatbelt. Tuesday at 7 on BBC One.
You're watching BBC One and this week's See Here.
Off you go, mate.
Well, that's how it all started. 85 people, some hearing, some deaf, set out to cycle 350 kilometres from Amman to Aqaba. Quite a task. We at See Here thought, what a great story, we've got to film it. So we notified the NDCS of our interest, and they sent us a copy of the itinerary. It was a very heavy schedule involving numerous locations, which left us in a dilemma. Do we make a half-hour special, or even 2 programmes? Our other concern was that maybe filming in an empty desert might look rather dull. How wrong we were. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? Before we went out to Jordan, there was some discussion, and we decided we'd need 2 camera crews. One to cover the ride itself, and the other to accompany me to various sites of interest around Jordan, which the cyclists were not going to visit on their route, since they would be hard at it from dawn till dusk. After the filming, we started to put the programmes together, and soon realised that we could fill 2 shows with just the bike ride itself, without even including the additional filming that I'd done. So, that material was held back on the shelf, and this programme is your chance to see where I visited on the trip. We start with Amman. The culture of the Jordanian people is not a subject I learned much about as I was growing up, so I don't know where to start. But I've met someone, Ahlam, who's going to tell me all about life in and around Amman. Hello.
Hello.
So, you're going to show me around Amman?
Yeah, okay.
Wow, this looks great. I'm hungry.
Let's go inside.
Inside? Yeah, okay. Tastes really sweet. And what's this, cheese?
It's called kunafa. That's what we call it. That's it there.
It's really rich.
It does taste strange at first, but you'll get to like it after a while.
I've been watching these two using Jordanian Sign Language, and I thought I'd picked up a bit, but I'm totally lost. Very noisy round here.
Yeah, there's so much going on. It's always noisy. Do you want to look over there?
Do we have to dress like this in here?
Yes, we do. Women have to. They're not allowed to expose the skin on their arms or legs, so if you're in the mosque, you must wear something that covers you up, except for your face, hands and feet. Not the men, though. They just have to cover their heads and wear normal clothing. And men and women can't pray together in the mosque. They're separated.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's tradition that men and women don't sit together, and that's how it's remained.
So is Jordan a predominantly Muslim country then, or are there also Christians and other religions?
Well, it's an Arab country and the region has been inhabited for centuries. It was originally Muslim until the time of Christ, and since then we've also had Christianity. But basically, we're all Arab people.
Right. Thank you. One of the problems we had while we were filming was that sometimes we had to be in and out of locations quickly. One example was the mosque, because evening prayers were about to start, and Ahlam told me we'd have to be out quickly, because when the people came in, the men and women would be separated for prayers. And if we'd still been in there chatting, it could have created a bit of a problem. The people of Jordan are strongly Muslim. Jordan is a relatively new country, established in 1917, but its history goes right back to when it was ruled by the Greek, Roman and Turkish empires. Next, I went to Jerash, a Roman city which has been wonderfully preserved. Wow, it's amazing to see these huge columns. The Roman general, Pompey, conquered the city in 63 BC. People would flock here to watch theatre, attend parliament, and to trade in the markets. Trade flourished and the city became extremely wealthy. And it's still here after all this time. Incredible. As you can see, this road is lined by these huge columns. You can clearly see ruts in the road. These were made by the Roman chariots that used to hurtle up and down as people went about their business. And of course, General Pompey himself would have marched along this road, and today I get to walk in his footsteps and feel what it must have been like. By the 6th century, this city began to fall into decline. It had been a trading centre when people transported goods over land using camel trains. But that all ceased when more efficient trading routes were opened up by using the seas, leaving this city all but deserted. Today, standing here, it's fascinating to imagine how this place must have been all those years ago. Quite different. I must admit that before I went to Jordan, I didn't know much about the country at all. It wasn't until I got there that I realised it's actually a modern country, but with a history dating back many centuries. The River Jordan in particular has historical links with John the Baptist. But of course, most of us these days, when we think of the region, conjure up images of Bedouins and figures like Lawrence of Arabia. Do you recognise him? T.E. Lawrence. No? Remember the David Lean film, Lawrence of Arabia, in which Lawrence was played by the actor Peter O'Toole? The film brought to life the story of Lawrence, who lived in Jordan among the Bedouin people for 2 years, and he fought with them in the Arab revolt against the Turks. This railway line runs from Aqaba, through Amman, and right up to Damascus. It was used by the Turkish troops to ship guns and munitions into the region. Lawrence, angered by the invasion, decided to force the army back by blowing up sections of the track, first at Aqaba, then on to Amman, and finally right up to Damascus, forcing the Turks to retreat. Despite being hailed as a hero by the people of the region, Lawrence became disenchanted with life in the desert and decided to return to England. There he joined the RAF, using the name of Ross. Tragically though, in 1935, he was killed in a motorcycle accident. But it's his association with this region for which he is so well known. This is how the Bedouin people of the region have traditionally lived for centuries. Some have taken up the Jordanian government's offer of permanent housing, but many others have declined, preferring to live in the traditional tents. Their lifestyle is sustained by the livestock they rear. The sheep and goats they keep will graze the area until food becomes sparse, and then it's time to move on, and the cycle continues. Thank you. Looks very authentic, doesn't it? In actual fact, it was a bit of a disappointment. We'd been promised that we'd be shown a traditional Bedouin campsite, but when we got there, we found it was all just a setup for tourists. This is what happens when tourists go to a country. They're always hoping they'll get a glimpse of the real culture and traditional way of life. But in reality, it's often dying out. Ironically, it's the sheer numbers of visitors to a country that erodes the culture. An influx of film crews can have a detrimental effect too. Let's turn now to some of the people who were on the ride. Hi everybody. Hi there. Nice to see you all again since we were last together in Jordan. It's really nice to get together and talk about the trip and look at photographs and do a bit of reminiscing.
Yeah, it's really exciting. That's that first class.
That's Amra, I remember that. There's something I've been wanting to ask. See here, we're following you all for that week, making a film. But did it get intrusive? I mean, were we a bit of a nuisance?
Well, on the first morning, there was another accident. A lady was in front of me. I was following her, and she came off. It was a deaf lady who used BSL, so I was lucky to be there because she didn't know what was happening, and we had to wait for the doctor to come. The other interpreters were spread out, so they weren't around. So that was a problem of communication. But that BBC arrived. Wow, we've got an incident, an accident here, perhaps some blood. So they got out, and most of us said, please, can you go away? Because the woman was embarrassed where she was hurt and didn't want to be filmed while she was in pain.
No, I'm not a doctor, but I know a bit of first aid. Can you move your toes on that side? Can you move them? Yeah? Okay. What about your ankle? Your ankle. Your ankle. Can you... No, that one. This one? This thing. So, if you move anything in your leg, it's hurting in your hip. Yeah? Yeah, do you want the camera or not? Could you go away, please? Can you straighten your leg? Can you put your leg out? Right. So they're both the same.
Another intrusion on the BBC, it didn't give a true picture because when you were on your bicycle and you're going uphill and you're pounding away and everything's hurting and the sun's coming down, you'd see the BBC come by in their van with a camera, and you'd cycle along like this, and everything's fine, and then they disappear, and then whoa, you're back at it, and it's all hard work again, and it's all painful. That wasn't shown in the TV.
Well, I don't really think it came across that there were some top-flight cyclists amongst us there. I mean, there were 85 people. There was a big bunch who were, well, there was the two girls on the tandem. One of them was an international champion. We didn't have a chance to keep up with people like that. And I've had to explain that to my friends who've been watching the television programmes. So I don't think that was handled well. I don't think it really came across that there were a lot of us that really hadn't done an awful lot of training, and myself hadn't been on a bike for 30 years, and it was much, much harder, I think, for us. We really were absolutely exhausted at the end of the day, as Roger said earlier, and you know, these youngsters who were really experts were all off to, you know, enjoy themselves. Well, you know, it was curtains for me at the end of each day.
Yeah, I'd felt that as well. On the fourth day, the day we were cycling through the mountains, I was so disappointed that they didn't show just how hard that was, with us going down the really steep hills and the really steep hills going up, and people having to push, and even people coming off. And they showed so much of us going on the flat roads. And actually, in parts, made it look a lot easier than it was.
And no matter how much you try to explain that to people, I don't think they really believe, they can't really perceive what you're saying, can they? No, I agree.
That was the day we earned our sponsorship money, I think.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
One of the positive things about Jordan for me was the people at work seem to show more respect for me now than before I went to Jordan. Before I didn't talk to them much, but now, since I've been going round everybody collecting sponsor money and reminding them all to watch me on See Here, they've got really, really interested, and since then they've congratulated me on my hard work. And recently, to sort of show their recognition, they gave me this award. Let me show you. I was a little bit embarrassed at first, but proud too, because they recognised the hard work that I put in, and I hope that's true for everybody else.
I had a lot of difficulty with communication, and there were a couple of times when it really got to me. On Wednesday morning when we went to Madaba, and there was a beautiful church, exquisite paintings inside, a lovely mosaic on the floor. And obviously all the hearing people were there listening to the guide. They were standing up looking at the mosaic on the floor. The people who used BSL were watching the interpreters, and I found myself completely isolated again. And I suppose it was being very, very tired, and it was the emotion of the beauty of the church. It just got to me, and I went out in the car park, and I'm afraid I shed a few tears, because I thought that on a holiday or a trip, it was not a holiday, on a trip like that, with deaf people in the deaf world, that I wouldn't feel excluded. But I did, and I was really very surprised about that.
The little birds told me that you kept a diary whilst we were out there, with some rather exquisite drawings in it. What's this about?
I did. I kept a diary every day, without fail, so that I could remember all the little things that I'd experienced during the day, because you forget things so easily. Right. And I decided to do little pictures just as a sort of visual reminder. And this was actually running down to the Bedouin camp.
Oh, on a Thursday?
On the Thursday evening, yeah, because it was so beautiful, and we were quite late, and it was dusk. And the stars were absolutely beautiful. So.
Yes, I actually used the toilet in the Bedouin camp in the middle of the night, and sat down and looked up and didn't realise there was no roof, and it was just amazing. It was the clearest night I've ever seen in my life, and every star was there. It was just amazing. Yeah, it was great. Did I see some drawings of you on a bicycle with some men around you?
Ah, you did. Yes, I had quite a horrible experience on the Tuesday, because I was cycling in quite a remote area.
Oh, this is in the afternoon when we go up from down through the villages, yeah?
Yeah, and I was just with one other gentleman, and about 6 guys came up and separated me from the gentleman that I was cycling with, and started pushing me up the hill quicker than I could cycle. So I was finding it really hard to keep in control, and they were sort of grabbing me and really taking advantage of the situation. It was really unnerving. Right.
Yeah, we had. I was in a small group. There were 6 of us, 3 men and 3 women, and I'd noticed that it was starting to. first of all, it was just people watching us, you know, almost like the Tour de France bit. You know, they were sort of waving, and that was okay. But then people seemed to be, obviously men seemed to be coming out into the road. So we had one incident where the two guys at the front went past and a couple of women went past. And then the woman that was in front of me had to go out around them because they came into the road. And then they were just in front of me sort of smiling, so I dropped my shoulder and went into them and pushed them back out of the way. And we stopped then and decided that, you know, we didn't like how this was going, so we had a man at the back, one in the middle, and I brought up the rear again. And that way we felt, the women felt a lot more comfortable about it.
Of course, it's predominantly a Muslim country, so
that's right.
All the ladies are going to be covered from head to toe in clothing, and here we are, 85 of us, scantily clad in shorts and little tops, so we must be an extremely unusual sight for them. Yeah, rather a cultural shock, I think.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame that those things happened, but I also think it brought us a bit together.
I think that tea or Pepsi or 7-Up, whatever, water is refreshing. But even more so that communication is refreshing. And I have seen the proof this evening. Thank you again for coming here to help our school for the day. Later on...
Well, they've covered over 90 kilometres today, so it's been a long, hard slog. But then on top of that, there's this visit to a deaf school. It was 1.5-hour drive to get here, so we could meet all the children. Tonight, we're having a special presentation evening to hand over a cheque from the NDCS. Don't forget, these people didn't go out to Jordan to lie on a beach or to have a jolly good time meeting new friends. The point of this trip was all about raising money to help the NDCS with the work that they do with deaf children. And the grand total came to over £100,000. In addition, those who took part in the bike ride learned something about deaf people's needs and became more deaf aware. And some of them are even going to do the same thing again in Cuba later this year. But as well as all that, the cyclists have formed unique friendships that will stay with them forever.